space to speak your mind with Cornwall Mind for better mental health.
This is the June show of A Space to Speak Your Mind, a radio show and podcast about mental health and well-being in association with Cornwall Mind, made by people with lived experience. We do occasionally cover subjects that some listeners may find distressing. For more information, help and support, please visit cornwallmind.org. I'm Richard, and on this month's show, with more than half of blind and partially sighted people highlighting that they don't feel they have the opportunity to play sport, I'll be talking to Gareth Evans MBE, also known as Mr. Motivator, and Gareth Davies from the RNIB about the many hurdles that often prevent those getting involved in sport and physical activity, and how being blind or partially sighted affects our mental health. I'll be speaking to Jain from Cornwall Mind about the Hearing Voices group that takes place in Bodmin. You can hear what happened at the swimming event that was organised by Man Down at Porthleven Harbour during the recent bank holiday weekend. And with Volunteer Week taking place during the first week of June, I'll be chatting with Joe from Cornwall Mind and finding out about some of the new groups that have been launched. That's all on this month's A Space to Speak Your Mind.
A Space to Speak Your Mind with Cornwall Mind.
New research suggests half of blind and partially sighted people in the UK are inactive or do less than 30 minutes of exercise a week. Gareth Evans MBE, also known as Mr. Motivator, has joined up with the Royal National Institute of Blind People and British Blind Sport to create an accessible online hub to provide activities for partially sighted people across the country, with a series of free, audibly accessible workout videos. And he joins me now alongside Gareth Davies from the RNIB. Good to have you both here.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for having me.
Yeah, see, that's my other voice.
So Gareth, can you tell us your story?
Well, yeah, before I started working for RNIB, it's just over 7 years ago, I actually was registered blind. I have a genetic eye condition that was first picked up in my sort of 20s, but my sight was perfectly fine then. And I was made aware in later life, you may become blind in your 70s or 80s. But I was just one of the unlucky ones that about 7 years ago, my vision literally just dropped off a cliff. And so within a matter of a couple of weeks, really, I was registered blind completely out of the blue. So yeah, that was a bit of a blow. But as I was telling Mr. Motivator earlier, it was really through fitness and exercise that when I accepted the situation, which took about a year, exercise and fitness was really what started lifting me out of that quite dark place.
In fact, something really interesting. We were talking and I felt, can you imagine that your life was quite fine and all of a sudden the next day you get up and you can't see all the things you saw the day before? Can you imagine the impact that must have on you as a person? And I was asking, Gareth, how did you feel about that? And I think it's really important to say how you felt because you were quite angry, weren't you?
Oh, yeah. It was, you go through basically, it's like suffering a loss. Call it sight loss. It's like a bereavement in many ways because you've lost something so dear to you, your sight. But yeah, that first initial stage is not accepting it and just very angry, why me, all that kind of stuff. And it put me under a lot of pressure and a lot of stress around everything from relationships, worrying about whether you'd have a job, be able to keep your job, mortgage to pay, that kind of thing. So it's really, really stressful, difficult.
And that reaction is not unique because, I was talking to a young man who also lost his sight. It's a genetic condition. In fact, it ran in his family. And so he was told that he was going to lose his sight within the next 2 years. And in fact, 6 months later, he actually lost his sight. And we talked about the impact on him mentally. And, there was a real depressive point that he had in his life. And I said, what really lifted you out of that? And what lifted him out of that situation was a number of things, as Gareth just alluded to. One was actually he became more of an exercise person because what it did was it gave him a sense of worth, where in fact he was doing something that was physically good for him. Mentally, it put him in a wonderful place, right, where all of a sudden he felt valued, he felt that he was able to cope and deal with whatever it is. And it made him actually give him a time of reflection where he could reflect on all the good things in his life rather than actually focus on the negative thing that has just happened. There's a real upside to everything that was going on. And I just thought that was a real good way of putting things, that there is always an upside to things. And if you look for it, you don't have to look far to see it. And it gives you a reason to really continue with living and make you understand that that bad moment is not a bad life. And I think for all of us who are close to the edge sometimes, and we've all been there, in particular over the past 2 years, we've all been pushed to the edge. I think it's important that we, number one, look out for each other, support each other. And that's why this whole association with the blind and British Blind Sport is really important, because what we're doing is we want people to see sport differently. And those 3 words are kind of critical. And that's why this whole campaign, the platform, gives people the opportunity to actually find a place where they've got a buddy that can help them through so many things. And I want everyone now to just go online and actually follow this.
And there's the obvious side of things we might associate it with loss of sight. But as you're saying there's that emotional side too, and everything that goes with it, whether it be anxiety or anger. So it's the mental health implications as well, not just the physical.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, I can only speak for myself and my own personal experience, but having spoken with many blind and partially sighted people over the last few years, I think it's shared, is that when you do lose your sight, you lose your identity. That's one thing. And you have to learn to build a new one effectively, which again, I did through sport and stuff. But it's things around things like losing your independence. You can't drive all of a sudden, or you can't just go to the shops or take your son to a football match, that kind of thing. So there is a real sort of huge emotional impact on there. And, and if any of your listeners are going through this at the moment, if you contact the RNIB helpline, they are able to sort of put you in touch with the relevant RNIB counselling services. But yeah, there is a huge impact. And just going back to see sport differently, one of the reasons that we want to engage blind and partially sighted people with sport isn't just about the physical side of things. We want people to become more active. But as we know, through sport, and we're not talking about playing at elite level, but it's about making friends. It's about making new connections. It's about mood follows movement afterwards. So you feel much better. It's just really, sport is so good for rebuilding that emotional connection, and also sort of like giving you that confidence that you can do pretty much anything, but you need to give yourself time and you need the opportunities to actually do that. If you search up See Sport Differently online, there's a really good, for example, quiz there that will tell you about different sports that may appeal to you and where you can actually do them. So we're not just talking about these issues. We've put in some real practical steps to get people moving again.
Derek, it's so important doing exercise, and you've been an advocate for physical activity for many years. So how do you see the link between physical activity and good mental health?
When Gareth talks about loss of sight, and the only simile I can give is when you lose someone you love, right? I lost my granddaughter who was only 12. And the way I felt was the worst time in my life, because it drives you down to the bottom of this well and you desperately want to come up the sides, you want to climb up. And the only thing that helps you up is that you've either got to go, I must go on. That's number one. And number two, how am I going to go on? Well, I've got to listen to all the messages that I've been giving to people over the years. And that is, if you're feeling stressed, you either reach out to someone or you talk, right? I realized that in being strong for other people during that time, that I was actually not looking after me. And so I actually became really ill because I was holding the stress in. But the moment I sat down with my wife and my youngest daughter, when I say young, she's 26, and I sat down to them and I said, listen, I realized why I got ill. And it's because I not cried. And the moment I cried, that was the moment I felt better. Now I understood all of a sudden why women cry so often, because when they do, you feel better. And as men, we tend to think that crying is a weakness, but it's not. Crying is actually a strength. And when you cry, you actually feel so much better within yourself. And then you can actually start putting all the dots in place, right? All the dominoes in place, and realize that, in fact, that little blip that you have in your life, it's only a little blip, right? And although the loss is great, there's actually a greater element of life waiting out there for you. And you've got to go out and embrace it. And you're now armed with more information than you ever had before. You've now got appreciation of all the other senses you have. And in my case, the other senses in terms of, I've always cared, sure, but now you care at a different level. I've always made time, but now I want to make more time. I've always thought about what happens to the future in terms of where do I want to get to. You now say to yourself, well, listen, I better get on with it. Someone matters in my life. Let me tell them they matter. But the other thing that's really important is the talking about how you feel. Don't do it alone. And that's why what we're talking about now in terms of seeing sport differently is that to remind people that you're not alone. And the resources are there to make your life so much better. And all you have to do is initially sit, watch, take notes, choose wisely what you want to do, and then just go for it. I've gone all deep, haven't I?
Yeah, it's lovely. What I was going to say is just that the start in this fitness, it can be a journey. It certainly was for me, and I get it's not for everybody. But what we want to do is just to get people just move that little bit more. And Mr. Motivator has done these incredibly accessible home workouts, because quite often as well, when you live with sight loss, very much higher levels of anxiety. People talk about in fitness, you need to get out of your comfort zone to feel better. Well, when you're blind or partially sighted, going out your front door is getting out your comfort zone. it's a scary place, with sort of traffic, with obstacles on the street and whatever. So just to begin to develop self-esteem and confidence and that physical movement journey, Mr. Motivator has made these really good home workout videos that are on the online hub at C Sport Differently. Just so we're trying to get people just to begin that journey. This isn't about, as I said, running marathons straight away or anything. You don't even have to do that at all. This is doing what you want, what you feel comfortable doing, and doing it where you feel comfortable, because we're very aware that we're all so different,
It's critical. And, in doing these exercises, yes, everyone knows me in terms of the energy and everything else. But when I put these together, I'm having to use far more words to explain the actual activity or exercise I'm doing, the actual movement. But what are we saying to people is that small adjustment in either the accessibility of sport or making something far more adaptable can make the life of someone who is actually blind so much easier. And so what I've had to do with these workouts is literally to almost retrain my brain to do them in a totally different way, so that basically when someone interprets the move I'm describing, they do it the same as someone who can see me properly.
And just to go back as well to talking and having conversations, we have very different conversations, I think, or perhaps more deeper conversations when we're having a walk around the park.
Yes.
Or walking up a hill or a mountain or whatever. So again, that's activity, that's movement. So we just want to encourage people to have the space to have these sort of conversations that gets things off our chests.
Sure. So we want everyone listening right now, they're going on to see sport differently. All you have to do is put that in Google, and it's going to open up the world to you. And also, don't forget, I'm there to actually give you a hand, and that's what it's all about. I want to be your buddy, all right?
That's fantastic. If you could just give us the website one more time, please.
See sport differently is all you have to do. Put that in Google and it should come up almost immediately, all right? Let me just remind people that when they go onto these resources, right, there's three key things. One is you'll hear stories from people who are actually having to either change their life to actually be able to play sport. Their story is actually quite inspiring and uplifting. You'll get the workouts from me and stuff like that. And the final thing that happens really when you go on there is that you just realize that, in fact, you're not alone. We're there to actually help you and support you, right? And don't forget, follow Mr. Motivator on Real, Mr. Motivator on Instagram to lift your spirits. Yeah.
Thank you so much to both of you for talking with me today. That's Derek L. Evans, MBE, Mr. Motivator, and Gareth Davies from the RNIB.
Be well, Richard.
Thank you very much.
A space to speak your mind with Cornwall Mind.
Over the recent bank holiday weekend, Down organised a swim in Porthleven Harbour to raise awareness of men's mental health, and I went along to find out more about the event. It's bank holiday Sunday. We're down at Porthleven Harbour and here with Brad from Down. I'm also joined by Gail from Down to talk about the event that you've been organising today. So just tell me about what the event is all about.
Yeah, so a bunch of us have been in the village for a while and decided to kind of start a swimming group, piggybacking on the success of the Salty Sisters, the ladies group that do regular swimming here, and started out with just a group of friends, just having a chat, passing the time of day while we had a swim, and slowly but surely more kind of guys joined us. It became really good, really sociable, good kind of time for people to unwind after work and taking time out from their day, etc. And then unfortunately one of the guys that we swim with took his own life last year, so we wanted to do something to kind of remember him, but then decided that we should probably make it about all men that struggle with mental health. And me having links to Down, having been a volunteer there for 4.5 years, it was just a perfect fit. And Rob, who is obviously from Mind, come up with the idea of doing 84 kind of lengths to represent one man for every man each week that takes their own life. But I think we quickly realised that we were probably going to get through more than 84 lengths. So while that figure's been significant for us, it's kind of not stopped us doing as much as we can today. And the final count is awaited, but I think we've smashed that record, and I think we're going to be over £2,000 kind of raise for Down, so it's going to be really good.
It's really important to be talking about mental health and the fact that you guys are down here, and just a great atmosphere, but there is that serious side, and I think having days like this just opens up that conversation, doesn't it?
It does, and it's really nice to see so many men and women here, because although it's Down that there's a charity this is supporting, it is women that really help persuade their loved ones to come along to our meetings and help themselves.
And just remind us about Down and where you operate and how you facilitate the meetings.
Yeah, Man Down holds fortnightly meetings across 27 locations in Cornwall. You can look up where those meetings are, and they're mostly at 7 o'clock in the evenings for 2 hours, various nights of the week. We've grown to 27 now. We're everywhere from Bude down to Penzance. The latest one we've opened up is in Porthleven on the Roseland, and we've got 3 or 4 more to go when we'll reach our target of 30 odd, covering the whole of Cornwall.
And they're great places where men can just come along and they don't necessarily need to talk, they're just in a friendly environment where it's open and supportive.
Absolutely, yes. A safe place for them to talk. They won't be judged. Everything that's said is confidential, and invariably they will find other men in those groups who can empathise directly with what they're going through themselves.
Yeah, and talking is so important, isn't it? Just to have that conversation, because as men we do tend to hold things in, and that can be detrimental to our mental health. So just having those conversations is really important.
One guy said to me, what is it that's so relaxing about walking into a room full of 10 strangers? You know, I've said things tonight, he said, that I've never said to my wife or my family or anything. So it's a place for guys to, even if you think about it, just practice their lines, practice what they want to say and verbalise their emotions and feelings in a way they might not have ever done before. And then they realise it's not so hard after all, and they can come to terms with their own emotions and feelings.
And it is a fantastic turnout. Is there more people than you expected today?
Oh yeah, a lot more. I mean, I guess it would be kind of 20 or 30, so... But, you know, I think we've had 50 or 60 people.
And what was it like for you in the water? I mean, you do this regularly, but it's quite a challenge today.
Well, yeah, I actually haven't been in for a few weeks, so it was a little shock to the system when I jumped in.
It's really nice conditions today. It's lovely and clear and clean, and it's gorgeous. Yeah, I really did enjoy it. Right. It's good to get back in the water.
I think we've just had the final count there, so 302 lengths extra, so that's 386 lengths in total, so it's amazing.
Yeah, and how do you feel about that, about the day itself and about the turnout?
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I knew we'd get more than 84, but maybe not 386. I mean, that's massive. And to see so many people in the village as well. I mean, you know, I'm a member of the gig club as well, and we try and hold events, you know, with the community regularly, and they always turn out. It's a really great place to live, and they've really supported us. And the communities across Cornwall support us really well as well, so you just can't fault it.
And joining me now is Ian, who's just been out for the swim. So Ian, tell me about your involvement with today.
So we've got a group of guys who call the Salty Seamen, and we regularly swim here in the harbour, and a couple of the guys are involved with Man Down, and we just wanted to do a charity swim and make awareness of the Man Down charity, and advertised it on the local Porthleven Facebook page, and try to get, hoping to get about 20 people down here, and we've had this today, so it's been fantastic. Really great turnout, really pleased.
So Nick's here as well. How's it been for you, and what was your involvement today?
Brilliant. Absolutely blown away with how many people have turned up for it. It's been brilliant.
And it's raising awareness of mental health as well, so that's really important to do, isn't it?
Yeah. It's just shocking to know how many, the statistics are dreadful, really. So if we can play a little part in sort of giving some support in terms of funding and in terms of just being here for anybody who wants to have a chat, then that's really what it's all about.
And especially for men as well, supporting Man Down, it is a difficult conversation for men still historically, and hopefully days like today can really open up that conversation for people that might not be having talks about their mental health.
I think it's making men aware that there is somewhere you can go. You can go and have a space to talk, and I think Dale said earlier on, it's not just the men that get affected, it's the family members, the wives, the partners, the children of the men that are in a bad place. So anything that we can do to help raise that awareness to help people, really.
And what great things to do as well, because swimming is so beneficial for our mental health. I mean, what's the temperature like in there at the moment?
It's cool, but bearable. I've really enjoyed it, actually. Really enjoyed the swim.
Yeah. Do you get the benefits from swimming, from the cold water swimming?
Yeah, I've been doing it for I've lived in the village 3 years. Wife and I are doing this for 3 years now. 3 winters. I'm starting to shiver now.
So I'm here with Alison and Philippa, and you're from the Salty Sisters, is that correct?
Yep, we're from the Salty Sisters, yep.
And you've been swimming today?
We have, yes, come and support all the men, and obviously for a good cause.
And he's supporting Man Down and talking about mental health awareness. And how is that important, as far as getting that awareness out?
It's vitally important. Both of us have been through it ourselves, and obviously we know people particularly that have been affected by the Man Down situation. But yeah, both of us have been affected, and swimming is just, I wouldn't be without it. For my mental health now, just could not do without it.
Yeah, and I think for men particularly, raising the profile and sort of acceptability, I suppose, of talking about your mental health and kind of bringing young men and boys sort of together to recognise the issue. I think it's really important. I think it tends to be easier for women to talk about those things, and it shouldn't be that way.
I know, yes, we've spoke to a couple of the guys already, and having people down here, having the whole family, it's just a nice event, isn't it, to be able to enjoy the water, but also have that important message as well.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, like Alison said, getting in the water in itself is a great thing, but giving it a profile that those conversations can be started at home, or it doesn't have to be something that's heavy. It needs to be part of everyday life, really, for us. And I think coming to having a community like this, it's a really good thing.
And tell me about the Salty Sisters. How did that all form, and how does that go about?
Well, one of our friends, Pippa, she started swimming by herself and then decided to put it out there on social media, anyone want to come and join, and then it's just grown and grown and grown, and it's a real good community, not just us girls, but obviously like today you can see the children out here as well, because obviously they've had friends who have been affected by like the whole man down and mental health and things, so it's just really good atmosphere in the village for the swimming.
And I think we sort of started, you go in because you think, I'll give it a go, and then actually it gets kind of addictive, and particularly when I've had really down moments, it's almost a necessity, it's a need to get in the water, and everything kind of evens out a little bit more,
Yeah, we'll often have someone will literally be like, anyone swim in the next half hour, and know that something's happened, they need that swim, that mental boost from the water.
Our very own Rob from Cornwall Mind has also been swimming, and you're out of breath.
Yeah, I did full length and just trying to warm up a bit, but absolutely beautiful day, and the water's so clear, and really emotional about how many people are here today. Just trying to remember some of the people that we've lost, so just a fantastic event.
And that's a great thing, isn't it, because people are here, they're remembering, but it's a positive aspect to be able to do something like this.
Yeah, really positive. Just there's a really nice community here, and a really nice sort of swimming community, so people talking about a very serious issue, but then also getting in the water and swimming and feeling like really good for doing it as well. So just a really emotional event.
You swim quite a bit as well, don't you?
Yeah, I've been really pleased actually. I swam all through the winter. There was frost on the harbour and we still went for a swim, so felt really good.
Do you find swimming a good tool to have for your own mental health?
Yeah, for sure. There's times when I feel like a bit sketchy, a bit wobbly, and as soon as I get in the water and come out again, I just feel really good. And just hang out and talk to people as well. So it's a social event and physical fitness as well.
Yeah.
I think it'd be really good to try and make this annual event, try and remember the people we've lost, but also just being positive and getting swimming.
Recently, Cornwall Mind have started a Hearing Voices group, and I caught up with Jain in Bodmin to find out what it was all about.
A space to speak your mind with Cornwall Mind.
It is a space to speak your mind. I'm joined by Jain from Cornwall Mind, and we're talking about the Hearing Voices group that takes place monthly in Bodmin. So Jain, just tell me what the group is.
The group sort of offers a safe space, really, for people to come together and to talk about their experiences of hearing voices and what that's been like for them. I think historically it's been very hard for people to admit to hearing voices because they immediately get a lot of medication and people step back, or have done in the past. I think things have changed a lot now, but that's how it started up, as an alternative way of managing voice hearing and that experience and what that's like for somebody.
And you have lived experience about this, so can you tell me about your own experience and how this came about?
Well, I haven't had that much experience of actually hearing voices, but it's more the immersement in the psychiatric system that I was a victim of, and I'll say a victim. But actually I've learned an awful lot from that, and I think that's what's brought me into working within the non-medical model, and there's a lot of that and more now, which is great, which is, and so Cornwall Mind feels a really good place to be bringing the group to. Been running it for 20 years now, through Rethink to start with, and then it went a bit sort of autonomous. And then I felt it needed to be brought back under a sort of umbrella of some sort of governance or something.
And how have things changed over those last 20 years as far as diagnosis and treatment?
Well, there is a lot more acceptance of working with the voices people have, rather than trying to say they're not there, they're not real, medicate them out, which actually very seldom works. It gives you a lot of side effects and a lot of stigma attached to that. So it's about forming a relationship with your voices in a way, and being curious, accepting that they're there, and what is their message is wonderful. There's a lot of people now who have been through the psychiatric system themselves with the voices and other diagnoses, and have found a way of working with her, and are now trained psychologists and psychiatrists, and are working now with people who are training to let them know that there is a different way of doing this.
It must be quite a scary first step to acknowledge what you're experiencing.
I think it is, and actually the Hearing Voices Network is very important to talk about that, because that's where it all started. In their training books, and I've done quite a lot of training with them in the early years, they talk about 3 stages. There's the startling phase, where you first hear them and you can't think, well, that's going on. And then there's something like the organisational phase, and then but you work through organisation, and then I think just the managing. And the organisational bit is where you start to be curious about them and trying to understand. And somebody called Rufus May, who's one of these people who works now with voice hearers and all sorts of psychiatric, psychological sort of areas, he says the unusual beliefs, and this covers beliefs as well as auditory hallucinations, are meaningful and symbolic. They are not merely the misfirings of a faulty brain. And I think that's a lovely thing to remember, really. It's about why they're there, what's their purpose, and very often their root is in some trauma, but there are an awful lot of other reasons, like urinary infections, isolation, abuse, well, that's trauma, but all sorts of causes where the brain hasn't been able to process what has been happening.
And it's a lot about recognising and managing those symptoms, isn't it?
Yeah. And knowing that you are stronger than your voices. Your voices cannot make you do anything you don't want to do. And there are such brilliant people out there who have written and talked about their experience of this. Eleanor Longden, wonderful people. Moses heard voices. Gandhi heard voices. There's a lot of people in different cultures. It's a sort of wisdom, isn't it? It's a sort of channeling, of elders, and it's just really interesting. I mean, I find it just so interesting, and I don't think you never know. Everybody's experience is different too.
And we had a gentleman on the show a few months ago, Sean Flores, who was telling us about, for him, he was explaining it in the sense that all of us have that kind of thoughts in our minds sometimes, or we all have our inner voice that when we're making decisions or judgments, or even when we're just analysing how our day's been, we kind of have that inner voice. And he sort of says it's for him, it's sort of an enhanced version of that, really.
Yes.
So for people to try and understand what those thoughts are, that's quite a good basis to work from.
Yes, absolutely, it is. And there's a very fine line between sort of intrusive thoughts, conscience. You do something and there's a voice in there saying, you're rubbish, that's dreadful, done something terrible. How could you do that? I mean, we've all done that. Very often the people, and lots of people see them as a guide, a spiritual guide or some sort of guardian. Angels come in, but people there's such a broad remit of what their understanding of where their voices are coming from, what they are. That's not right, that's not voices, that's something else, It's just an experience. And yes, intrusive thoughts, it's how you manage it, even manage the intrusive thoughts, I suppose. I suppose if something could start as an intrusive thought and then become more distressing. And mainly, I would say, yes, people who come to the group through the years have always been people who've been severely distressed and not managing, and the voices are telling them to do things, and it's not a good experience.
So tell me about the group itself, as far as what stage people are when they come to you and the kinds of things that you do within the group.
It's really interesting. So a lot of people come or possibly referred by CPN or health professional. Some people never come back. It's very informal. I mean, we have people who've been coming for all 20 years, and they're brilliant because they will sort of anchor the group, and any new people coming in, they'll be able to explain to them how the group has helped them. They don't come every time, they're now perhaps working. Particularly one wonderful woman who's been coming all this time and now does a lot of voice dialoguing with her voices. When they're bad, she will actually make a time and sit down and have a voice dialogue with them.
And is the group about exploring the reasons behind things, or is it about finding coping mechanisms? Is it about some kind of resolution? How does that process work?
Well, it's certainly about sharing coping strategies. That's a big one. That's brilliant because that's really, what they can share with each other. It's also providing a safe space for them to say what's happening, because maybe they daren't say that to a doctor, psychiatrist actually, because it sounds too awful. But it's about keeping people safe enough and holding that space.
And do you find that to have other people around that, and that's peer support of others that are experiencing the same things, to know that it is a safe space to talk?
Yeah. That is what everyone says, talking to people who understand. And I think the experience that they're having, and it's the same with so many things, isn't it? If somebody has had that experience, it's not the same as them, it's not the same experience, but it's an understandably will kind of know that place. That is the main thing that people come to the group for. Yeah.
And you're currently running the monthly meetings, and they take place in Bodmin, don't they?
Yeah, they take place in Bodmin.
So for someone that may be experiencing this either for the first time or something that has happened for a long period of time, and then now at a point that they would like support, what would you say to them?
Well, if people get in touch, I will speak to them, always go and speak to them, either on the phone or meet them if that's what they'd like. Sometimes I would bring someone who comes to the group with me, but sometimes I just go on my own. It's and explain it, and I always say that it's fine if they want to bring someone with them, either come in the group with them, because I'll let the group know that might happen, and it's fine. Because I know how hard it is to come to a group for the first time, new people. It's terrifying. It's terrifying. I would find it terrifying. And so we try and make it as easy as possible.
So tell me more about the Hearing Voices Network.
Well, that was set up, it's an international thing now, but in this country it's the Hearing Voices Network, and there's a website which I would advise people to have a look at. The origins is from, I think he's Dutch, Professor Marius Rom, working with someone who was a voice hearer, her voices, and she challenged him, and said, well, how do you know they're not real? You can't hear them. People believe in God, they don't see God. Why don't you understand that I hear voices? Why do you have to dispute that? So he then did a sort of whole research thing on, asked people to ring up the television station, and if they heard voices, loads of people did. And so, he became interested in that, and that's where he started his research with somebody called Sandra Escher. And that's grown from that. The ethos is about not approaching it from a medical model, but they are real. They are real. And now people do brain imaging. If they're scanning someone's brain who's a voice hearer and they're hearing voices, that part of the brain is active. The hearing bit is active. So they are hearing something. But it is about understanding and not judging, being curious. Quite often it is very frightening, especially if the voices are telling you to do something awful, and helping somebody to manage their experience, really. There's a very good organisation called Drop the Disorder. It's called A Disorder for Everyone, and they do some wonderful training, and they do a short 2-hour thing on Zoom, understanding voices. And it's done by a lot of people who have previously heard voices, who've moved into the training and treatment sort of psychiatric field, but are working in that way, bringing a new approach, new understanding, and that's really interesting. So I would really recommend having a look at that, Drop the Disorder.
Some good resources online, and for anyone that wants to join the group, they can go onto Cornwall Mind, onto the website, cornwallmind.org, and there's a referral form on there, and they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, I'd love that.
That's Jain from Cornwall Mind talking about the Hearing Voices group in Bodmin.
A space to speak your mind with Cornwall Mind.
It's now time in the show to catch up with Jo from Cornwall Mind to find out what's happening this month. And the start of June is Volunteers Week. So tell me about that, Jo.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Yeah, Volunteers Week takes place on the 1st to the 7th of June every year. It's a perfect opportunity to say a huge thank you to all our dedicated volunteers. At Cornwall Mind, we rely on our fantastic team of volunteers to help us deliver our services and support our day-to-day work. And we're really proud of the work that our volunteers do, and we wouldn't be the charity that we are without them. The impact of those giving their time to Cornwall Mind is immeasurable, and their help means that we can support more people to improve their mental health and well-being, and that means the world to us. So we just want to say a really big thank you to all our volunteers.
And tell us about what else is happening at Cornwall Mind this month.
Yeah, we've got lots happening. So we're just launching our singing groups, which are in Cambourne. We've got a Sing for Wellbeing group, It's a singing group for people affected and bereaved by the loss of someone close to them that may have died by suicide. It could be a family member, a partner or a friend. It's a safe and supportive environment with opportunity to meet others who may have shared a similar loss. And you've got a bit of peer support, a bit of professional support, and just participate in an enjoyable activity which can help improve your well-being. You don't have to be able to sing to join either. And the singing is led by a lady called Gail Hampshire, who's an experienced and enthusiastic singing leader, and she's really passionate about singing for health and well-being. So that's one of our groups. We've also got our Sing for Joy group in Camborne. This group is a singing group for anyone who wants to sing with others to improve their sense of well-being and happiness. So it's open to anyone. We all know that singing can help boost mood and reduce stress. This is also a safe and supportive environment with chance to meet others, get a bit of peer support, and just do something that's fun that can really help improve your well-being. For more information about our singing groups, just visit our website, cornwallmind.org, and you'll find the groups on there under what we do, our wellbeing service, and all the details, days and times are there. It's really easy to get involved. We have a referral form on our website. We welcome self-referrals, and once we receive that, someone will be in touch.
And the 5 Ways to Wellbeing groups are becoming really popular, and you've got some more information on some new locations.
Yeah, again, really exciting. So we have a 5 Ways to Wellbeing starting in Truro on Tuesday the 13th of June, 6-week programme. We're launching a 5 Ways to Wellbeing in Bude, which is great because we've not been in Bude before, so it's really good to work in the north of Cornwall. That's starting on the 8th of June on Thursdays. And we've got 5 Ways to Wellbeing starting in Hale on the 29th of June. Again, easy to get involved. Just visit our website, download a referral form, and once we've got it, we'll be in touch. We don't have a long wait. If we receive your referral form, we do aim to be in touch within 2 weeks.
That's great. So all the information on the website, have a look now at cornwallmind.org. Thanks very much, Jo, for the update for the month.
Thanks, Richard.
A space to speak your mind.
That's all for this month's show. You can download the podcast right now if you've missed anything in all the usual places, Apple, Google, Spotify or Amazon Podcasts. For support and more information for better mental health, visit cornwallmind.org or call the Mind helpline during office hours on 0300 123 3393. You can phone the 24/7 NHS local urgent mental health response phone line, which is free to access by anyone, any age, on 0800 038 5300, and call the Samaritans anytime for free on 116 123. If you missed any of those numbers, they're also in the notes on the podcast of this show right now. And if you'd like to be part of next month's programme, just get in contact with us on email, aspacetospeakyourmind@gmail.com, follow us on Twitter @aspacetospeak, or like us on our Facebook page. We'd love to hear from you. I'm Richard. I hope you'll join me next time for the next edition of A Space to Speak Your Mind.
A space to speak your mind with Cornwall Mind for better mental health.